Hey everyone, we've got another specimen today. This is number 227 in our collection. The heart would have sat roughly like this in the chest. Superior head would have been here. Inferior, the legs would have been down here. Left, right, anterior coming towards the camera, and then posterior towards the turntable. So we'll start off how we always do. We'll find what looks to be the right atrial appendage, and this looks to be, at least externally, a right atrial appendage, triangular and broad-based. So we'll go ahead and start there. We'll open up the heart here, and it does look like we have a morphologic right atrium here. We see that there are pectinate muscles that spill outside the confines of the atrial appendage, consistent with a morphologic right atrium. We do find the oval fossa here, and we find that the oval fossa is intact. There is no atrial septal defect. And then trying to look for the coronary sinus, and there's a coronary sinus right back here. And remember, the coronary sinus is part of the triangle of Koch, so we'll delineate that real quick. That's demarcated by the coronary sinus, the tricuspid valve leaflet, and the tendon of Todaro. And at the apex of this triangle, so right about here, is where the atrioventricular node would sit. Also of note, there is a right-sided superior caval vein, and we can see the right-sided superior caval vein draining into the morphologic right atrium. And this is where the superior caval vein drains into the roof of the right atrium. If we look at this right-sided atrioventricular junction, there appears to be a right-sided AV valve with 3 leaflets. There are septal connections of this valve to the septum here, consistent with the morphologic tricuspid valve. When we look at the ventricle itself, we find that there are coarse trabeculations. There is a septomarginal trabeculation with its cranial and caudal limbs, aka the Y of the septal band, all consistent with the morphologic right ventricle. As we open up this ventricle and turn our attention to the RV outflow tract, we do see that there is a ventricular septal defect. This ventricular septal defect lives within the Y of the septal band, or phrased differently, in between the cranial and the caudal limbs of the septomarginal trabeculation, consistent with an outlet ventricular septal defect. Now, as we look at this defect more, we see that the cranial limb of the septomarginal trabeculation, forms one border. Then the caudal limb forms another. And this border, the posterior-inferior border here, is also completely muscular. But then the more superior border is actually formed by the pulmonary valve, and there is some fibrous continuity between aortic valve leaflet and pulmonary valve leaflet, making this a doubly committed juxtarterial outlet ventricular septal defect. The semilunar valve here, I've already said this, is a pulmonary valve, 3 leaflets, 1, 2, 3, with 3 sinuses, no coronary arteries arising from them. And here is the pulmonary trunk then, which has obviously been transected. So we'll flip this heart over to the back. Here's the posterior aspect of the heart. Here is the left atrial appendage. We see that when we open up the appendage, all of the pectinate muscles live inside the appendage itself, don't spill out into the atrium. The atrium itself here is smooth-walled, has a smooth vestibule, and thus this is a morphologic left atrium. Here is the flap valve, and here are the horns of the oval fossa. And once again, we see that the atrial septum or the oval fossa here, is completely intact. Now we come to the left atrioventricular junction. We do find a 2-leaflet atrioventricular valve, and this atrioventricular valve does not have any connections to the ventricular septum, consistent with a morphologic mitral valve. You can see that the papillary muscles here don't look normal. In fact, the papillary muscles look joined here, and you can see all of the cords returning to these fused papillary muscles. This is going to be the posterior leaflet of the mitral valve, and this is going to be the anterior leaflet of the mitral valve. If we go ahead and look at this ventricle here, it has a morphologic mitral valve leading to it. It has fine crisscross trabeculations, all consistent with the morphologic left ventricle. And then as we get into the left ventricular outflow tract here, we see the ventricular septal defect from the other side now. And once again, we can appreciate its proximity now to the aortic valve. So let me try to get a good image of this. So here is the aortic valve here, and we can see mitral aortic continuity, and then we can see the VSD here. And we can see how, in fact, the superior border of this defect is actually formed by the aortic valve, and there is some fibrous continuity between the aortic valve leaflet and the pulmonary valve leaflets. So once again, a doubly committed juxtarterial outlet ventricular septal defect.